Welcome back. Are you ready to install Linux onto our ESXi servers? So we've got our build guide here. The ISO is available to you over on SAN 1 or SAN 2, and you will need to upload that into your data store, just like all our other installations. Okay. Check this out when you get to the drop-down list here, all the different Linux distributions. Linux is also very popular in the cloud. Check all that out. The one that we're after is SUSE OpenSUSE 64-bit. We're going to put our virtual hard drive onto data store 2. Please do check the build guide each time you install, as there are some changes taking place with the hardware in the lab. Just want to verify that we're thick provisioning. Thick provisioning, lazy 0 looks good. One point I want to make about whether you put this on CorpNet or DevNet, it eventually needs to go to DevNet. But if you're not quite sure about DHCP on DevNet, then you could put it on CorpNet for the time being. You could even put it on the head 224A network if, for time being. So the option there is yours. Flexibility is yours, which network you want to put it onto. It does make a difference during install. If during installation, if it can determine that the internet is available, it will do updates as part of the installation, and they're significant. It takes about half an hour just to do those updates. It is recommended, yes. It is recommended that that you have it onto the internet and let it do its updates. So I've already uploaded it earlier into my library. Okay, pretty straightforward install. I don't know that we've done anything different here than what we've done in past installs. Just double check our settings here. 2 CPU, 4 gig of RAM, 32 gig hard drive. I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot on DevNet. Data store ISO, connect it, power on. Okay, we're going to give that a try. Okay. Let's go ahead and power it up. Okay. There is a lot of options here, and I just want to focus in on some of the key things. So our goal is to get through a default installation, just pointing out some of the places where you might make other decisions if you install this in the future down the road. There are people that devote their whole career to just working with a particular distribution of Linux. I think through the years we've been working with SUSE Linux, either SUSE Linux Enterprise Server or OpenSUSE for about 20 years. I know it's a long time. And during that time, we've done where we hosted the ISO onto a network share. We did network installs. We taught SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for about 4 years, actually using curriculum from, at that time it was owned by Novell. Now it's its own company. Quite a history here. The way that the installation is going to progress is it's going to work its way down through this list here on the left. What I'm going to attempt to do is just to pause the video when we get to places where we wait. There's a couple of places where we wait for a long time, and I'll point those out to you. What this screen is for is that Linux distributions are multilingual and different keyboards to places around the world. And so you can just kind of test your keyboard right here to be sure that you've got your language and your keyboard set correctly. License agreement, it is open source, yes, but open source doesn't, it still has a license. It has the GNU license. So this is where we're going to have about a 30-minute wait. If if it found the internet, then it will give you this option, online repositories, and enabling. Here, let's just read it. Enabling the online repos during installation gives you access to all the software that does not fit onto the installation media. When you install the SLES product, it's actually 2 DVDs, and OpenSUSE is on 1 DVDs. So would we like to activate this? When you say yes, and it'll pull them up here for us, and you can see the different online places where software is pulled from. So Linux comes in well, I mean, packages. Yes, that's a term that we use, but if you take a look at these things, so there's a repo. That's the term we use here, repo. There's one that handles the updates. Okay. There's one that handles non-open source software, and some companies will choose to uncheck this, the non-open source software. Some of the things that are non-open source are like the video drivers, things like that, and truly, and some, just some different mindsets or schools of thought about how software should be handled, and it's not uncommon really to have people say, I don't want anything non-open source. We're going to go with all the defaults here. And what it's going to do now is, once we get this started, is it'll take about a half an hour, and it's going to go and pull down everything that's new, updated, or changed based upon our mounted ISO image. So let's go ahead and get this started. And I'll pause the video here for a bit. It went much more quickly this time. I did a practice install earlier today, and this one seemed to grab all those updates much more quickly. So my estimate that I passed on to you of a half an hour, in this case, it was only about 10 minutes. This is a critical screen here, and you can notice that we're following working our way down. So we just did that, and this is where you pick what graphical or command line interface you want to add to the core Linux installation. I know this is weird, right? With Windows, there's no choice. Well, I mean, there's server core, and then there's that kind of thing. Server core, graphical server, yes. So there is a choice, but look at the choices here with OpenSUSE. We've got desktop with KDE Plasma, which is what we're going to do. We're gonna take that one. Desktop with GNOME. So GNOME is just a different graphical overlay from KDE. And then you've got XFCE, which is different still, generic, server. You've got, and there's more. These are just some of the popular ones that they've added to the installation menu. If you want to go and pick and choose, I don't know, there's a dozen. There's probably 24. This is the nature of Linux. And I do want to impress that upon you, that Linux is so varied that it's both a blessing and a curse. It's so varied in that you can go all kinds of different directions with it. And okay, I know, but I do want to make that point with you. But for us, it's important that you pick desktop with KDE Plasma, as all of the projects we're going to do as we build onto this Linux install, we're going to be on the KDE Plasma desktop. This screen warrants just a bit of information, and you saw a similar screen like this when we installed pfSense. Do you remember that? What it does is pfSense is based on BSD, FreeBSD, excuse me, and it's it's under the Linux umbrella, but technically it's more of a Unix variant, but doesn't matter. What it's done is it's gone out and it's looked at our 32 gigabytes of hard drive, and it's saying, okay, generally speaking, this is how it would be correct to divide up that hard drive, how to partition it. I know in Windows, typically one major partition, maybe a couple for installation or booting, and even that's pretty new. With Windows, it used to be just one huge partition, but here with Linux, look at how it's divided up. The var directory, the user directory, temp directory, server directory, and so on. And then these are the references. This is how hard drives are noted in Linux. SDA, SDA2, okay. So what it's saying here is that this is what it's recommending based upon what we're installing and the size drive that we gave it. It's recommending that it be divided up like this, but you could take this choice down here, which is guided, which it's sort of a wizard where it walks you through and says, well, do you want to do this? Do you want to favor a swap file? You're going to bring up a web server? Well, I'm simplifying. And then expert partitioner is you say, I'm in control. Let me divide up how I want. And certainly as your skills grow, if your career is heavy into Linux, then you're likely to go the expert partitioner route. So the next thing it's going to do for us here is it is going to grab a network time server for us. And if we were to go to other settings, I'll try to keep the video short, but if you have time, go in there and you'll just see that it pre-configured network time protocol for us. Remember on ESXi, we did that manually. This just happens to be OpenSUSE includes it. The top box here is the display name, not the actual login name. So notice as I type it, I typed it in mixed case, but down here it goes in lowercase. This is a kind of a standard Linux etiquette because Linux is case sensitive, and usernames are case sensitive, passwords are case sensitive, and it is etiquette, Linux etiquette, that usernames be in lowercase. Now the password is the one that we shared with you by email. So we just do that twice. And I want to ask us not to automatically log in. This Linux install, we're going to actually build it like a server. We're going to do server stuff with it, but it doesn't know, right? OpenSUSE could be your desktop, your daily driver, so to speak. It can be a lot of things where maybe auto login is convenient. Now, when you auto login, it still will prompt you for the password when you go to do system level things. In a Windows machine, we call that elevating. Linux, this has been in Linux forever, where you log in and you're given normal user privileges, and if you want to do something that requires super user privileges, then you have to elevate or you have to provide credentials to do that. So you could do an automatic login, realizing that every time you want to do something important, it's going to ask you to validate by using the password, and it will be this password. That's what this checkbox here says. Use this password for systems administration. So when we log in and we go to do things and it's wanting us to prove authority, it will be this password that we used here. This is an amazing screen here. And I just, again, taking a moment to give you a tour of Linux. There are just so many options here. Think, oh, Randy, I'm getting tired of you saying that. I want to drive that point home. There are so many options here. You can have different bootloaders. We're choosing the GRUB, the Grand Unified Bootloader version 2. Under software, we can, we are doing, just set your mind at ease. We're doing a default install, so I'm not going to check any boxes here, but these are all the things that you could potentially go ahead and do as part of the installation. Now, some of these we're going to do later. We're going to do DNS and DHCP. We're going to bring up an Apache server. We're going to do other stuff, but it's all here, and you can pick and choose from that. So that was under software. Default system. Let me scroll down here. Okay, graphical mode as opposed to command line only mode. Hardware. You can look at your hardware here. You can make changes to the firewall here. You can make changes to the network card here. So the firewall is going to be enabled, which we want. If we want to disable, you click there. We want the firewall enabled. SSH will be disabled. Two different choices for how the network card is managed. And OpenSUSE has switched between these in the last couple of times that we've done this as part of the project. So this time it's defaulting to Network Manager. 2 times ago it defaulted to Wicked. That's actually the name of the package. See, this community of Linux, the names are just different. All right, let's get going with our install. Information required for the basic install has now been completed. If you continue, it tells us that we're going to repartition the hard drive, and it's going to wipe out any data that was existing. And you can see over here, we're now to performing installation, and here's another wait. Now, in my earlier testing, this also took about a half an hour, but I'll just pause the video and we'll wait and see. And the video will end with this showing up on the logon screen. That's where we'll quit. And then we'll pick up with going into OpenSUSE and how do you do this? How do you do static IP addresses? How do you ping? How do you trace? Okay, you get the idea. There's a bunch of projects listed in Canvas, and we'll do best as possible. We'll keep the videos as short as possible, but do walkthrough videos, overview videos on all those technologies. But let me go ahead and pause this, and I'll pick up back with you. What'll happen is it'll finish this and it'll reboot, and then if everything goes well, you'll see the login screen, and that password that you gave earlier would be the password that you would use then to log in. The user would be site-root, and then the password would be as you assign. So I'll go ahead and pause the video, and I'll see you when we get to that point. All right, so things look good here. We rebooted. Took right at about a half an hour. Now we don't have VM tools installed, and so mouse and screen are going to be rough for a bit. That's going to be one of the first things we're going to do. But I'm going to wrap up this video then, and then we'll just take kind of a task at a time, and we'll look at VM tools and just a lot of stuff. All right, so you'll see those assignments in Canvas. But let me wrap this up, and I'll be back, and we'll continue on.